The Catholic Church, with a history spanning nearly 2 millennia, offers a fascinating study in profound transformations. Over its long existence, this institution has morphed in unimaginable ways to become the entity we recognize today. Yet, beneath its sacred facade lies a less explored narrative, tied to an enigmatic figure, who in certain interpretations dared to alter time itself and even divine laws. It's not uncommon for scholars and individuals with a broader perspective on religion, those who look beyond traditional scriptures and seek a deeper historical understanding, to point to chapters in the Catholic Church's past that are still considered acts of extreme gravity. If you're finding this content intriguing, hit that like button, ring the bell, and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our next videos. In its early centuries in Rome, the majority of the population clung to pagan beliefs, resisting the message of a Messiah. Consequently, the first followers of this new faith, the Christians, faced continuous persecution and marginalization. The tide only began to turn in the 4th century, after the decline of the Roman Empire, when Emperor Constantine granted freedom of worship to Christianity. With this permission, Christian doctrine flourished rapidly within the Roman Empire and, by around 390 AD, it achieved the status of an official religion. Constantine's decision to divide the Roman Empire into western and eastern halves also had a monumental impact on the ecclesiastical structure, leading to the formation of the Roman Church in the west and the Byzantine Church in the east, a historic event known as the Great Schism. From this point, the Catholic Church ascended to a position of immense power, often exerting pressure for the conversion of vast populations. This influence endured for centuries, even extending into the era of the Great Discoveries. We only need to recall that European expeditions were accompanied by missionaries, whose mission was to persuade native peoples, at all costs, of the existence of a single God, represented by Christ. The cultural impact was overwhelming, forcing the natives, at least outwardly, to adopt the faith imposed by the explorers. Long before transatlantic missions in the Middle Ages, the Church revealed its most severe face. Anyone who refused to accept its doctrines was promptly condemned to the stake. The repression went further. If a person, especially a woman, offered a simple remedy, like a tea to alleviate an ailment, she was accused of witchcraft and frequently executed publicly. During this period, the medieval church was the second most powerful institution in the world, surpassed only by the empire, which in turn saw it as an essential pillar for maintaining its control. The context was ripe for this hegemony. The population, with limited access to information and profoundly fearful of spiritual matters, unquestioningly accepted the impositions of the church and royalty. In an environment where any dissent was severely punished, the clergy and secular power operated in conjunction, securing their authority through fear. The true core of the Catholic Church's influence in the Middle Ages lay in its spiritual dominion. For most people of that era, the dread of eternal damnation in hell outweighed any earthly hardship, including death itself. The Church was seen as the sole legitimate interpreter of the sacred scriptures and the direct representative of God on earth. Its authority was so vast that even the most powerful monarchs bowed before the Pope. Beyond its spiritual strength, the Church accumulated immense economic power. It controlled the collection of tithes, an obligatory tax of 10% on the income of individuals and institutions. In many regions of Europe, even kingdoms paid this levy to the Church. The ecclesiastical patrimony was impressive. Castles, entire villages, and vast rural properties were part of its domains. Many of these lands were donated by the faithful, inherited through wills or acquired by purchase, solidifying the Church as one of the largest landowners on the continent. It's evident how immense the Church's power was during that period, significantly surpassing its current influence. In the absence of alternative sources of information, the words of the king and priests were accepted as unquestionable truths. The common citizen had no right to question or disagree, under penalty of facing unimaginable retaliation. The Church's authority was so comprehensive that even the calendar itself was modified to suit its conveniences and needs, without any regard for the citizens. But what was the reason for this alteration, and how was time measured before? Until 1582 AD, the chronological standard was the Julian calendar, established by Roman Emperor Julius Caesar in 46 BC. This calendar remained in use until Pope Gregory XIII ordered its reform and adjustment. According to historians, the primary goal of the reform was to correct a calculation error in the Julian calendar that was affecting the precision of the Easter date and other religious events based on the solar cycle. The Julian calendar, introduced by Julius Caesar, considered the solar year, the time it takes for the Earth to complete one orbit around the Sun, to be 365.25 days. To adjust for this extra quarter day, a leap year was added every 4 years. However, the actual solar year is approximately 365.242 days. This meant the Julian calendar accumulated an error of about 11 minutes and 14 seconds per year. Though seemingly insignificant, this difference became substantial over the centuries. Gregory XIII's first action was to remove 10 days from the Julian calendar. Thus, October 4th, 1582 was directly followed by October 15th. Furthermore, a new rule for leap years was established. They would still occur every 4 years, but with exceptions. For example, years divisible by 100 would not be leap years unless they were also divisible by 400. The year 1600 was a leap year, but 1700, 1800, and 1900 were not. The year 2000, however, was. Initially, the reform was adopted by Catholic countries, like Spain, Portugal, Italy, and Poland. Protestant and Orthodox nations resisted the change, incorporating it much later. England, for instance, only adopted the Gregorian calendar in 1752, and Russia after the 1917 revolution. And what about the names of the months? Were they created or adapted by Gregory XIII? The answer is that Pope Gregory XIII neither named nor created them. He merely reformed the year's counting while retaining the traditional names of the months, which have their roots in ancient Rome, primarily originating from the Julian calendar, and, before that, the archaic Roman calendar. Have you ever wondered why the months from September onwards contradict the number they represent? For example, September is related to the number 7, but it's the 9th month. December should be the 10th month, but it's the 12th. Why this discrepancy? The names of the months have Latin roots and reflect a combination of Roman gods, emperors, and ordinal numbers. Thus, January honors Janus, the god of gates and beginnings, making it the month of new starts. February is the month of purification, derived from the term Februa or Februarius, which was a purification festival. March is dedicated to Mars, the god of war, and marked the beginning of military campaigns in the Roman Empire. April has two possible origins: aperire, meaning to open, referring to the blossoming of spring, or a tribute to the goddess Aphrodite. It's considered the month of spring's opening in Europe. The month of May originated from the name of the goddess Maya, a symbol of fertility, and was thus associated with growth and nature's renewal. June, in turn, honors Juno, the goddess of marriage and family, traditionally linked to unions. July was originally called Quintilis, as it was the 5th month in the old Roman calendar, but was renamed in honor of Julius Caesar. Similarly, August, formerly named Sextilis, 6th month, was renamed to honor Caesar Augustus, the first Roman emperor. The months September, October, November, and December retain their Latin numerical roots: Sept, 7, OCT 8, Novi, 9, and Des, 10. These months were, respectively, the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th months of the old calendar, which began in March. With the inclusion of January and February at the beginning of the year, these names were kept, even with the shift in their position in the current calendar. This implies that previously, the year had only 10 useful months. The winter period, roughly January and February, was neither named nor counted as part of the official year. However, in the 7th century BC, the Roman king Numa Pompilius added January and February to the beginning of the calendar, pushing the numerically named months forward without altering their original names. After all these explanations about the calendar changes, which, incidentally, are not universally adopted in all countries, and the nomenclature of the months, a fundamental question arises. Does the alteration of the calendar make Gregory XIII an Antichrist? Do you know what the term Antichrist means according to the Scriptures? Humanity, according to the Bible, is living what is described as the end times, the final era of Earth's history. In this context, a central figure emerges in prophetic discourse, the Antichrist. But what does Antichrist truly signify? The Bible teaches that this figure would manifest as an opponent to truth and to Christ himself. In his first letter, the Apostle John warns, "Dear children, this is the last hour, and as you have heard that the Antichrist is coming, even now many Antichrists have come. This is how we know it is the last hour." 1 John 2:18. The original Greek word for Antichrist carries two distinct meanings. It can refer to someone against Christ, in direct opposition to his ministry, or in place of Christ, suggesting a figure who attempts to usurp his role, assuming the appearance of a Messiah but being a deceptive imitation. Unfortunately, in religious circles, false prophets abound who act as true antichrists. John also emphasizes that, even in the early days of the Christian era, many antichrists were already active. This means the spirit of deception isn't limited to a single future character. It was already present among the first believers, and John states, "They went out from us, but they did not really belong to us. For if they had belonged to us, they would have remained with us. But their going showed that none of them belonged to us. I am writing these things to you about those who are trying to lead you astray." 1 John 2:19-26. According to the Word of God, antichrists were individuals who claimed to be Christian but deviated from the genuine faith. They were liars who denied that Jesus was, in fact, the Christ, God's anointed one. The Bible is clear on this. Who is the liar? It is whoever denies that Jesus is the Christ. Such a person is the Antichrist, denying the Father and the Son. 1 John 2:22. And also, for many deceivers have gone out into the world, who do not confess that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh. This is the deceiver and the Antichrist. 2 John 1:7. These antichrists were not merely unbelievers, but propagators of a distorted gospel. They preached a different Jesus, an adulterated message. The Apostle Paul warns against this type of deception in his second letter to the Corinthians, stating, "For if someone comes to you and preaches a Jesus other than the Jesus we preached, or if you receive a different spirit from the spirit you received, or a different gospel from the one you accepted, you put up with it easily enough. For such people are false apostles, deceitful workers, masquerading as apostles of Christ. And no wonder, for Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. It is not surprising, then, if his servants also masquerade as servants of righteousness. Their end will be what their actions deserve." 2 Corinthians 11:4-13 and 15. The conclusion we draw from this is that the Antichrist is not merely a singular future figure, but also a spirit present throughout history, operating through deception, false doctrines, and pretended representations of Christ. Spiritual vigilance, therefore, remains essential for those who wish to remain faithful to the truth revealed in the Scriptures. The concept of the Antichrist, as we've analyzed, emerged in the early Christian church. And, according to the Apostle John, this figure arose from within the Christian community itself. Thus, the first Christians weren't just waiting for a great adversary in the future, as many still do, but were already dealing, at that time, with the presence of false teachers, distorted doctrines, charismatic leaders who deviated from the truth, and dangerous divisions that undermined faith. John designated them as antichrists because, under a guise of religiosity, they led the faithful away from the true belief in Christ. The question remains, has this dynamic changed, or do we still face similar challenges? We'll leave that reflection with you. If delving into these topics is your passion, subscribe to the channel for more stories and analyses like this.